Talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
March 20th, 2020. Joe here at Simple Life Show. I appreciate everybody for joining me today. We got a lot to go over. I know many people out there are isolated. You're quarantining yourself. You're social distancing. You're washing your hands. That's also a good thing. Make sure your hands are clean. This really is going to be a video about the warring of the ideologies between the left and the right and which one is really going to win throughout this entire process. Whenever the fallout happens, the crisis and the things that are lying around, the ideas that are lying around, which one is going to win? Are we going to go to more of a libertarian point of view, or are we going to a socialist point of view? What's going to happen? One of them is going to win. We're going to be talking about that in this episode. First thing that we need to really talk about right now are the actual numbers of deaths and the obviously the confirmed cases worldwide. We are sitting at 254,653. Now, when I first looked at this, we were sitting at around 240 something total confirmed in the world. Now we are sitting at 254. This was only an hour ago. Total deaths was a little over 10,000. Now we have actually gone 400 deaths over within the last hour. This thing, as I have been talking about, as many people have been talking about, is rising exponentially. I think over the next few weeks, going into the beginning of April, we will see the peak of this entire crisis. We will see this reaching into the tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of total deaths worldwide. At a minimum, some people are actually saying that we'll reach 1 million in this country alone before this is all over with. This is not doom porn. This is not trying to rile people up. This is just something that is going to happen. There's been plenty of studies that have been done on these types of viruses, the types of pandemics that spread across the entire world. Even with all of the social distancing, even with the flatten the curve hashtag that is going on, there's only so much that we can do. We have to remain realistic about what the outcome is going to be. But what's most important, and the most important thing that I really wanted to talk about in this video, which I will try to keep it as short as possible, is the warring of ideologies. If you have been woke for any period of time, you will know that one of the first things that you have learned, especially after 9/11, that the government, at least the governments of the world, especially in the United States and the elite that run this country, the 174 corporations that actually run this country, they always have certain things that they want to do, certain things that they want to implement for the American population, and in fact, the world. They want a global world. They want a new world order. We have heard this over and over. It is no longer a conspiracy. However, there is a lot of conspiracy theories going out right now that simply don't make sense. The first one and the foremost, that this is a type of pandemic or a virus that was bioengineered in a laboratory. We have talked about this yesterday. Many studies have been done over the past few weeks that have proven this false, that have debunked the whole idea that this was a bioengineered weapon. If you want to spend all your time on Alex Jones or a lot of these other conspiracy websites, that's fine. I don't want to give it that much light of day. And the reason is because there's plenty of conspiracies going on right now. There's plenty of things that the global elite are trying to do to this country and, in fact, the world, to try to form it into a more globalized type of society where there is only one type of currency, where there is only one type of religion. We already see the all types of the religions, the Christians, the Jews, and Islam already coming together and forming as one. But that's really not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is a warring of different political and economic ideologies. The right versus the left, capitalism versus socialism. Which one is going to win? Anytime there is a crisis, certain things are going to happen. Certain ideas are going to be put on the table. We have already seen the $1,000 stimulus checks that are going to be going out. We will be getting into that. Some are saying that it's taken directly from Andrew Yang, but this is something that has been done before. We have received stimulus checks more recently back in 2008 during the financial banking collapse as well. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is the warring of ideologies. And if you don't know who Naomi Klein is, she is a far left. Obviously, she is trying to convince other people, convince the nation, and convince you that socialist policies are the best. And not so much that, but the capitalism is bad. And she has recently put out a kind of a documentary about the how capitalism is destroying this nation in light of the coronavirus. And we're actually going to watch here a little video of her talking.
Shocks and crises don't always go the shock doctrine path. In fact, it's possible for crisis to catalyze a kind of evolutionary leap. Think of the 1930s, when the Great Depression led to the New Deal.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
In the United States and elsewhere, governments began to weave a social safety net so that the next time there was a crash, there would be programs like Social Security to catch people.
The right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care, and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health.
Look, we know what Trump's plan is. A pandemic shock doctrine featuring all the most dangerous ideas lying around. From privatizing Social Security, to locking down borders, to caging even more migrants. Hell, he might even try canceling elections.
So I don't really think that Trump is going to be canceling any elections. Now, we do have some of the primaries that are going to be closed since people are not able to get out due to social distancing. This is going to cause a lot of problems with the 2020 election, as we see right now. Hopefully, this will all blow over by the end of the year when the election gets in full swing, when we actually vote. But that's yet to be seen as of right now. What is really important to remember, if you remember anything of what I'm talking about, is that the fact of the matter is that whenever there is a crisis, different types of things become more pliable, become more of a possibility. Bailing out corporations, enriching more of the social status elite out there, or something that obviously the Republicans are gearing up towards and for. And it's not just helping out the corporations, but it's also forwarding different ideas such as gutting Social Security and stuff like that. She does make a good point. However, when it comes to the different other social policies as Bernie Sanders would propose, such as Medicare for all, free college, and stuff like that. Those ideas are going to become more in the light of discussion because of all of this stuff. This is a bomb that has basically an economic bomb that has gone off, and it's revealed a lot of the problems with capitalism, or at least the form of capitalism that we have in this country. I know that's a subject that is very testy for a lot of the Trump supporters out there and a lot of the conservatives and libertarians. However, these are things that we do need to talk about. Are the problems of our capitalist system? Are the problems of globalization? That these are the issues that we do need to talk about. So what is the fallout going to be after everything is said and done? What are the type of policies that we are going to be putting in place? What is going to be more commonplace with the type of helping out of the general welfare of society. I am inclined to think that we should be focusing more on the health and the sanity of the population in general, because the way that we have been running this country, or the way the country's been run, without the influence of the population at large, has been lackluster. It has been causing a lot of problems with the climate, and I do believe in that. I am not a climate change denier. I think that a lot of these things, especially with the capitalist movement out there, have been not very very good for the climate in general, and not just the climate, but also the mentality of the American population. So we see in other countries, specifically in Ireland, not Ireland, but Iceland and other type of Nordic countries, where they are focusing more on the general welfare, not so much money-wise, but also how happy their population is. In this country, in the United States, we have been focusing on independence and freedom. Obviously, those are good things. But the crony capitalist movement, I'm not talking about free market capitalism. I am talking about the crony capitalism, the corruption that has been making its way throughout the entire system for the last 100 or more years. This is coming to a close, and it's only because of this coronavirus that it's being exposed for what it really is. And, a lot of these people like Naomi Klein, they come forward, and of course, they're going to get a lot of flack for what they're saying. They are proposing different types of socialist policies that would help the people. And those on the left are obviously for those types of things. Those on the right are not for those things. They are more for freedom and so forth. And I am not against that. What I am against is a lot of the corruption that is happening in all levels of government, all the way down to the municipalities, all the way up to the presidency of this country. The fact of the matter is that the typical American they do not know what goes on behind the scenes of their own government. The transparency it simply does not exist. We had Obama, who promised transparency, and we did not receive it. We have Trump now, which is a little bit more transparent. We had a candidate in Trump that wanted to shake things up. He spoke simply to the population. He used simple words. He did not talk in platitudes or different type of complex ideologies like someone on the left probably would. And those types of candidates are not popular with the population. Our general population wants to be kind of spoon-fed their information, unfortunately. And that's something that we really need to change as well. We need to be more independent with our media. We need to have more an independent voice. And we need to really come together and stop this left-right paradigm. But that is something that will come later, hopefully. But because of this coronavirus and because of the economic fallout that is going to happen, we are going to see more policies that are going to be coming to light and coming to shape that we did not think that was possible. Now, whether this is going to be more crony capitalism or is it going to be more socialist policies, one or the other is going to win. What can we do as to kind of stave off the hard jerk to the right or left? We need to be in more contact with our representatives. We need to be hounding them constantly about things. We need to make sure they stay responsible for what they do as our representatives. So what's something that was actually really interesting here, that whenever there is a new president, apparently there are certain types of simulations that happen. One such simulation happened when Trump was inaugurated, and it had to do with a breakout of a pandemic flu that spread across the entire United States. That was kind of like the Spanish flu of 1918. Now, this was kind of weird, and I'm sure that most people don't even know this, but there was actually pamphlets that were put out, and there was mock simulations that happen. Now, these mock simulations happen all the time. In fact, there was one back in 2018 that Bill Gates and others were part of, where he was talking about a pandemic that was happening. But his whole, his whole type of presentation was geared towards how unprepared we really were. Trump's own pandemic team was trying to tell him that as well, that we are wholly and solely unprepared for this type of pandemic. And these are the example of some of the slides that was actually displayed in the White House. Facilitated group discussion, pandemic response. Another one, I think I have 2 or 3 slides here. This is a pandemic response first move. It kind of outlines the different things that would be, the first, couple days to a couple weeks going into the first few months of a pandemic, and what the federal government should be doing. Now, there was some news here recently where the leader, the previous, I guess the previous head of the FEMA was actually stormed off of the MSNBC studios when they were having a discussion about this type of thing and what the federal government should be doing and how they should be kind of coordinating with the state governments. And he just he didn't want to have anything of it. He disagreed with everything they were talking about, and he stormed off stage. And here is a clip of that.
I've always believed the best way that the federal government can support our governors is to get out of their way, get them funding, use CDC to give guidance. As we're running out of stuff, I'm asking the question, why are we not looking at idle capabilities now? And governors just go contract for that resource. Why wait for the federal government to do it? If the federal government will just go to 100% on protective measures and reimburse them, how much more can states do so we can focus the few federal resources we have in the hardest hit areas?
So I just got some news from Mayor de Blasio here in New York, and there's been a dramatic increase in the number of cases here in New York City, 3,615 positive cases of COVID and 22 fatalities. Currently, to spread that out, there are 980 cases in Queens, 976 in Manhattan, 1,030 in Brooklyn, and 436 in the Bronx, 165 in Staten Island. I'm struck, Andy, by how quickly this has escalated. Just last week, we were considering whether or not some people in this company would go to Florida to cover the primary. That was on, Wednesday. On Thursday, that was off the table. Friday, all travel, it seems, was off the table. And that's just mirroring what's been happening across the country. At first, lockdowns weren't even considered, and now we're seeing lockdowns around the country. What we saw in China seems so draconian. And now people are wondering why we aren't doing these fever tests for people walking into buildings. Why aren't we going out there and aggressively trying to find those who might be spreading symptoms and separating them from the population?
Right. So it's a hard thing for people to grasp. But the number of cases we have right now, and even those tragic figures you just read, are going to seem minuscule in a week. The number of cases we will have will double every 3 days. Right now it's exceeding that. And we have a large number of cases that are untested still. So with all due respect to your other guests, there's not a governor in the country that's waiting for the federal government right now. They are all acting. What they need is coordination, because we have, believe it or not, we have masks, we have a lot of these things. Guess where they are? They're sitting in the supply chain. People are profiteering off of them, or they're going to places where people are hoarding them. Now that happens in a crisis. It's only by someone looking through the entire system and seeing where those needs are that you can say, stop hoarding them all in Texas. We need them in New York right now while we build manufacturing capability and put them in Texas. So what your other guest is suggesting here is not helpful. We need a great partnership between the federal and state government.
Bullshit people.
Craig, you want to sit down and respond to this?
So what was Craig really talking about here? He was trying to make the argument that the federal government is slow. We all know the federal government is slow. If you've ever been to the DMV, you know that it's frustrating to go through those long lines. So we know the federal government is not very efficient in anything it really does. And I kind of agree with both of them. A lot of the governors of these states are taking matters into their own hands. They are locking things down. More specifically, in New York, New York has been basically locked down for the last 3 days. And here's some images of just some of the isolation and the desertion in some of the areas of New York. Here we see in Times Square where there's basically no one there. For the city that never sleeps, obviously, it is fast asleep right now, almost in a coma. More interestingly, though, there has been a video that's just come out, very similar to some of the videos that are coming out from Italy and other places where people are in isolation and they are trying their best to keep an open, kind of keep an open mind and kind of a light heart during this whole thing. Here's a video of them singing Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. It really reminds me of a lot of the videos that are really coming out right now. People are, I mean, when you watch something like that, it's, it kind of makes you feel good about the people that are trying their best to keep a light heart throughout this entire thing. There was a lot of videos that came out specifically from Gal Gadot. If you don't know who that is, that's Wonder Woman. And she recently posted something on Twitter. I don't have that video where it was a song that was rendition by several A-list celebrities of another Beatles kind of song, Imagine. I don't think that was the best choice of songs. However, I think it was a little tone deaf because it really, and if you don't know if everyone knows if you live in the United States or in fact all over the world, you've heard the song Imagine, and obviously it talks about not having religion or God or anything like that. I think that we really need God in this type of situation. We need to hold on to something that is beyond ourselves, beyond the materialist, beyond the consumer type of programming that we've all been accustomed to. And I think it was a little tone deaf. I don't think that was intended that way, but at least that's the way I saw it, as well as other people saw it as well. So as far as a lot of these ideologies and the left and the warring of the left and the right, please be aware that whenever there is a crisis, things will happen that you didn't think were going to happen. Conspiracy theories are running amok right now. People are seeing the National Guard roll into a lot of these areas, and they are automatically assuming it's going to be martial law. They are assuming that there's going to be FEMA camps. They assume there's going to be concentration camps. I think this is something that we need to stop doing right now because there's no evidence of that. If the government wanted to kill all of its citizens, it wouldn't be using a virus such as the COVID-19. There's also, one of the biggest conspiracies that this whole virus was a bioweapon created in a lab in China. Now, there are some, now I'm not going to dispute that there are bioweapon labs and labs that in Wuhan, China, and that might very well be the case, that it might have just gotten out of this lab. What's actually more of a likelihood is that it did come from a bat. There have been several studies that have been coming out over the last few weeks that have tied the ferret-like cleavages of the virus to the respiratory systems of bats and other types of species such as that are like bats. So that's we really need to kind of take what's most probable at this point. Was it the fact that a lot of people in China that they eat stuff that we don't, that might be carrying certain viruses that that happen to hop to humans? Or is it a worldwide conspiracy to take down the population and the economy of the United States? This is a black swan event. They happen from time to time. We talked about this before. This happens, in cycles. It's called the grand cycle or the super grand cycle. This happens every 90 years. There is a crisis that happens, and it also causes an awakening of the public. It causes a shift in how we do things. This is what I'm talking about. This is what's going to be the shift going forward. Are we going to be shifting away from crony capitalism over to something that we see more along the lines of the Nordic regions, or in Europe, where we see a lot of socialist policies? Or is it going to be some sort of hybrid of that? Or are we going to go even further left? I mean, there is a lot of people out there that were simply just voting for Biden, but they wanted, 60 to 75% of the people that actually voted for Biden really wanted a lot of the policies that Bernie Sanders was espousing. So what does that mean? Is Biden really the safe choice? No, he really isn't. It doesn't really matter at this point, because it's a warring of ideologies. It's the right versus the left. And this is going to be coming to a head because of this coronavirus, because it's collapsing a lot of the outer shells of the onion of this crony capitalism that we have been living under. And I know this is a testy subject for a lot of people. People love capitalism. And I'm not talking about free market capitalism. I'm talking about the corruption that has been flowing through every vessel of this economy and this government for the last 100 years. And yes, it does need a change. Am I saying that we need to go to Marxism or communism? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that. I think that we need to open up our minds a little bit more on how we should be governed, and how this government should be more transparent and more for the people instead of for the corporations. Please understand this, that 174 corporations run the entire globe. 174. There are millions of different corporations and businesses around the globe, but only 174 of them run not only the fossil fuel industry, run the pharmaceutical industry, they run everything. And whatever they say goes, and especially with their ties in the media, they are forming the opinions out there. So we need to be a little bit more cognizant of what's going on and what the eventual fallout of this is going to be. We are focusing on washing our hands and so forth. And yes, we have to do that. We have to social distance. We have to get through this one way or the other. But we also have to understand that there is another war at play between a left and right paradigm. And one of them will win at the end of this. We will either have more crony capitalism, more debt, and an eventual destruction of our dollar, or we will have something better, something that's going to be more sustainable going into the future. We will have to go through a period of pain, of economic hardship. That is what the 2008 crisis has taught us, that trying to bail out all of these corporations because they are too big to fail, or they are just such an integral part of our system, is not a good enough reason to keep that corrupt system going. We will have to make a lot of hard choices in the future. We will have to be more self-sustainable. We will have to start growing our own food. We have to stop being so dependent on this system. We have to be leaning towards helping one another. We have become so entrenched in our own little bubbles and our own little worlds of consumerism that has made us blind to what has been happening around us. And that has to change. It is all part of the huge awakening. It's all part of the grand super cycle. If you don't know what the grand super cycle is, please look it up. Please research this stuff. It's been out there for a long time. It's ancient. It's been happening for a long time. So speaking of corruption, let me actually talk about this corruption here. If you don't know, let me actually get to where. Okay, so this was actually a report that came out yesterday, and it's been developing over the past few days. Senator Burr was at the head of this. He apparently had a secret meeting with a small group of senators, including, of course, himself, Kelly Loeffler, Dianne Feinstein, Ron Johnson, and Jim Inhofe. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that word. But during this time, January 24th, Trump was saying that it was just nothing. A lot of people were saying this was nothing. The coronavirus is nothing. It's not going to affect the stock market. There's going to be a small bump, and we'll just continue going forward to infinity. That's what we've been believing for the last 3 years. We haven't been looking at the road size. We have been looking at the windmills before we go off the cliff. We have already passed that point. But the point here is that there is a discussion and a debate on whether this was inside trading or not. Insider trading is what happens when you have insider information on what's going to happen to a particular stock. And when you use this information to make profitable decisions in the market and have foreknowledge of something that's going to happen. Now, this is not about a particular stock, but it is about the stock market and economy as a whole. They, the likes of these senators, they had access to information the general public did not have access to, because we were not told this information, because the likes of those in government, the CDC and the World Health Organizations, they didn't even want to call a pandemic at that point. They wanted to keep everyone calm. And what else were they going to do? They knew what was coming, and they didn't tell anybody anything. So no one actually ran to the stock market. They were hoping and praying that the stock market wouldn't collapse, but it did. And those who were in the know knew it was going to collapse. So they all ran collectively to the stock market, and they sold all of their stocks and shares, specifically in the hospitality sector, the entertainment sector, and so forth, transportation, oil. I don't know if they had any stock in airplanes and airlines, but if they did, they probably sold those too. So that is the definition of insider trading. I don't care what anybody else says. And as such, they should step down. I don't care how long they've been in Washington. I don't care how good of a person they claim to be. We have to have more transparency. We have to have more accountability in Washington. This is a type of corruption that I am talking about. This is just a small slice of the big pie that I'm talking about and that everyone's talking about. You want to talk about socialism, you want to talk about Bernie Sanders, that's fine. But that is sweeping the larger problem under the rug of crony capitalism. That is what's destroying this country. It is not socialism, because we already have socialist type policies. We have all of these things because we pay our taxes. The problem is that we are using our tax dollars in the wrong way, or they're being appropriated in the wrong way, and we do not have we don't have a choice. We don't have a say in the matter. These bills that are passed, we don't ever get to read them. We don't know. Is the government of the people and by the people? Absolutely not. It is the government for the politicians, of the politicians, and for the lobbyists. That is what it's all about. And that's how bills get passed. That's how legislation gets passed. That's how politicians make millions of dollars while they're in office. If you ever wonder why politicians make so much money, it is not because they do a good job and they get bonuses. It is because they are paid off by corporations. The same corporations, the 174 corporations that run the entire damn world. If you're not seeing this by now, please wake up. Please understand that this is really important, because these ideologies will either continue to destroy this country, or we have to wake up and change them. And while this coronavirus and the ensuing economic collapse is a bad thing for a lot of people, labor is also very painful as well, but it gives birth to new life. It gives birth to new ideas. And the baby that comes out of this might very well save the world. We are at the cusp of something big, and many people aren't seeing it for what it is. They are focused on all of the grenades and the landmines that are going off. We need to plug our ears and just get through this, because bigger things are coming. People the likes of Richard Burr, Dianne Feinstein, and all these people need to go away. Tucker Carlson was talking about this. Let's actually listen to him speak.
You may have seen the news reports this afternoon. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee sold more than $1 million in stock in mid-February after learning how devastating the Chinese coronavirus could be. He had inside information about what could happen to our country, which is now happening, but he didn't warn the public. He didn't give a primetime address. He didn't go on television to sound the alarm. He didn't even disavow an op-ed he'd written just 10 days before, claiming America was, quote, better prepared than ever for coronavirus. He didn't do any of those things. Instead, what did he do? He dumped his shares in hotel stocks so he wouldn't lose money. And then he stayed silent. Now, maybe there's an honest explanation for what he did. If there is, he should share it with the rest of us immediately. Otherwise, he must resign from the Senate and face prosecution for insider trading. There is no greater moral crime than betraying your country in a time of crisis. And that appears to be what happened. We'll have more on the story tomorrow.
So I know that a lot of people, they like Fox News because of a couple of main people. We have Tucker Carlson, we have Sean Hannity. They are probably at the epicenter of the rational movement when it comes to a lot of these things. Now, I have seen Tucker Carlson throw Trump under the bus. I have seen him throw a lot of Republicans under the bus as far as the crony capitalism that happens. I have not seen so much out of Sean Hannity, even though he has done it in the past. We don't need to have our media be bootlickers, and we also don't need our media to also try to placate us as well into believing something that is simply not true. I think that all media out there should be given the benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the corruption that is happening, especially during a crisis, we need to take all these things very seriously, because it's just the tip of the iceberg to sound trite. There is a deeper taproot that is happening. There is a deeper type of root system that is prevailing itself throughout all of our lives, all of our corporations that we supposedly trust. If you believe a lot of the things that you hear on mass media, then you need to do your own research. You need to kind of weigh it against other types of, I don't want to say talking heads, but other types of sources out there. So moving forward here, this is the informational checks. I know that a lot of people are really concerned about the economic stimulus, that the package that is going forward. Now, the first two waves have already been approved. One was for, I believe, 8.3 billion. One was for 100 billion, and now we have one that's close to 1 trillion. Now, as part of this, we have stimulus checks or helicopter money. We had spoken about this in a previous video, that they are going to be sending out the 1st of April. Now, originally, Steve Mnuchin wanted to have 2 rounds, one in April, one in May. They have only approved one for April, and I think this is actually a good thing, because they simply don't know what's going to be happening in May. Even though a lot of the experts have really been talking about how a lot of these types of things are going to get worse, that it's going to be an exponential growth of this pandemic, we simply don't know, because we haven't seen a lot of the how it's going to play out as far as the testing goes. We simply don't have enough tests yet to understand how bad it's going to get. But that is quickly resolving itself. More tests are going out. There is more type of testing facilities, especially outside of the likes of CVS and Walgreens. Now, we talked about this in a previous video. Please don't give out your health information. Please be cognizant of what you're giving out to Google, because Google is storing that. Yeah, Google's going to be storing that, and they're going to be using it later. But as far as the checks go, there's going to be one check that's going to be going out in the amount of $1,200 per person. If you filed jointly, it's going to be $2,400. Now, this could go up or down depending on how much you make. I don't know exactly how much that's going to be. If you make over $75,000, you will be docked a total of, I believe, $5 per $100 over $75,000. So that's a good news. You're going to get a little bit of money, but that's not going to solve the overall problem. It's going to help you get some more provisions, supplies that you need. It's going to help ease a little bit of the stress, but it's not going to bring back any jobs either. That is yet to be seen as well. So the eventual fallout, like I said, a lot of these things that were on the table and taken off the table are being put back on the table again. A lot of the bailouts and a lot of the crony capitalism, the corruption and so forth, that's on the table, as well as a lot of socialist policies. So we'll see in this chess game that's being played right now between the left and the right. And I don't even like using the term left and right. It's more along the lines of what is for the people and by the people, instead of for the corporations and by the corporations. We are going to have a switch and a change in how we view things going forward. Trust me on that. Elon Musk has been in the news here recently. I don't know if you were aware of this. Of course, he has called the whole thing dumb. But this was back on March 6th. He called the whole thing dumb. And, of course, he had a series of tweets where he says, this was not of any consequences. It's kind of overblown and so forth. But until he actually got sick, then he started to take it seriously. Before then, he had refused to close down the mandated order to close down the warehouses. He did not want to close down his Tesla warehouse. Elon Musk likes money just like everyone else. But I think like anybody else, that Elon Musk is coming around, and now he is being more a philanthropist in that, and donating certain ventilation machines to New York and other highly affected areas. So that's all to be said about that. Obviously, Amazon is overburdened right now. Many people, due to the lack of bricks and mortar businesses, they are turning to Amazon for a lot of their staples. And this is causing Amazon to hire more people, or requiring them to hire more people, upwards to the tune of 100,000, at least temporary workers. And a lot of them are saying that's it's a good thing, but there's a lot of different types of complaints about the conditions of the warehouses. Some of them are not properly supplied with sanitation, different types of things to sanitize your hands. A lot of people are saying that the morale is very low as well. Some are saying in other warehouses, however, the sanitation equipment supply seems less plentiful. The National Workers said that a couple extra bottles of hand sanitizers in the break room is about the extent of it. Some are saying that the morale is very low as well. Without us, there would be even more bricks and mortar shopping shortages and difficulties helping social distancing. One worker said, if Amazon shuts down, the whole economy is going to collapse. Well, they do have a point there, and a lot of people are turning to Amazon for a lot of their things that they need. And if Amazon shuts down, yes, that could cause a huge problem. People will just simply won't be able to get what they need, or they'll have to resort to other types of things, such as crime. Crime is on the spike right now. More people and more are buying guns. There was a recent report out of the Daily Caller that guns you couldn't buy guns anymore in D.C. Of course, this is kind of a misleading title, since guns have been outlawed in Washington, D.C. since 1976. There's only been one person that's been able to actually get guns in for people to purchase from him from other states. Now he has stopped doing that, so technically you cannot buy guns anymore in Washington, D.C. I don't know if this is really more fear porn than anything else, but it's just information as it is. I don't believe the Second Amendment is going anywhere. I don't think that they're going to be stopping the sale of firearms. However, if there is a collapse in social cohesion, if people actually start to rob other people's, I could see this as being part of the emergency acts that a lot of governors do have. They can stop the sale of firearms. They cannot take away your Second Amendment. They will not be coming and removing your guns or anything like that, at least not right now. But we need to kind of separate conspiracy theory with what's actually going on and what might happen in the future. Here is a recent report here. Yeah, we already went over that. Let me see. More recently here in the news, Tom Brady has officially signed on as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. We don't really see a lot of news in the news anymore. It's more like coronavirus reports and news as of right now. But I'm sure, this kind of leads into the whole isolation thing. People are they're having their withdrawals from sports. Obviously, the March Madness was closed and shut off, and it's not going to be rescheduled as far as I know. This is something that I'm really upset about. I really wish it wasn't that way, but it is what it is at this point. So people are kind of losing their minds as far as having their withdrawals from sports. But this is, this is good news for Florida, at least, that Tampa Bay is going to be receiving New England's leftovers. But, who knows? Maybe they'll have a good season next year. So we talked about that. I mean, this is really all I really wanted to talk about. Is specifically, obviously, let me talk about this, the scams that are going on right now, especially when it comes to this stimulus checks that we'll be receiving over the next few weeks. There are a lot of scams that are going on there. People are calling people on their cell phones, telling them that they are required, or if they wanted to expedite their check, to send in, some sort of amount of money, $50, $100 or whatever it is, to expedite their checks. Please don't fall for this. I know that a certain percentage of the population will be falling for these types of scams, especially the elderly population. Please please be on high alert when it comes to this, especially with social media running amok right now with a lot of not only conspiracy theories, but also scams when it comes to the coronavirus. People are scared. They are willing to believe anything right now if it means they can get to some sort of semblance of normalcy or safety. We always want to get to some sort of balance when we are in the midst of some sort of crisis. And those who are unscrupulous out there do take advantage of this. And I think it's disgusting, but it's just, it's just part of the world that we live in, unfortunately. On another good note, Nikki Haley, we all know her, we love her. That she, I don't know if anybody really knew this, but she was part of the board of Boeing. Boeing obviously has had problems with their MAX planes, and now they are asking for a $60 billion bailout. Nikki Haley recently heard about this, and she stepped down as board of directors. I'm not going to read the entire letter that she wrote, but she basically said, hey, this money that is going towards this crisis is for the people. It is not for Boeing. It's not for these huge corporations that made errors or mistakes in the planes that they created, and they have to kind of solve their own boo-boos. And this is not something that is for that purpose and that purpose alone. I think after the 2008 crash and the ensuing $26 trillion that went out to a lot of these corporations and banking institutions that were gambling, it kind of made a lot of these corporations say, yeah, they're okay. There's a stimulus package coming out. There's going to be a bailout. Let's get ourselves a piece of that. Nikki Haley says, no, I think this is something that's good. I think this is a transparent move on her part. And I also think it, for a lot of people, it will give them a little bit more faith in at least some part of our government, that there are still good people out there. But like I said, it's all part of an awakening that's happening right now. On a kind of a funny note here, before we close, that the NFL legend Michael Irvin says Corona should be stopped advertising their beer during the coronavirus pandemic. As we know, Corona lost a lot of money because people just simply didn't want to drink Corona beer. That is how fear does. That's what fear does to a population. Anything that's remotely related to the fear that you're having, you will shy away from. You will run away from. It is a fear. It is a response. It is a fight or flight response that is naturally wired into our brains. He writes here in a tweet here, since I am not a beer drinker, maybe it's just me, but I believe that Corona Beer should not be running their commercials at this time. So I don't want to hear how a Corona gets a line while coronavirus is getting lives. This is kind of just foot and mouth disease that a lot of people are having on Twitter right now. They are just kind of just saying whatever comes to their mind. I want to call it the AOC disease, where she just gets on Twitter and just says, anything that pops into her head. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it comes back to bite them on the butt in the end. So I will leave you with this. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. Bye.